Hey guys, just out on a hike, and I figured I'd share the woods with you. Just got our first kind of significant snowfall the other day. And that melted, and then we got like an inch or a little bit less last night. So, I wanted to take you guys down to one of my favorite spots around here. I haven't done many test streams using this camera setup, but I like it so far. I would like to get a stabilizer eventually for the camera, but this will do for now. What's everybody up to today? Jaden. Jadon. What have I told you about that? So this is the forest in Lunenburg. Oh, Jadon. It is a little bit cold, but it's actually maybe like 45 today, so it's warmer than you would think it was. But same to you, Doran. I love this spot. It's so cool. We have some water flowing here. What's everybody up to today? What's your plan? I have a show later tonight in Groton, although most of you guys are not local to me. How's your day going, Jaden? Hopefully it's doing well. Head cold. That's no fun. I haven't gotten the colds that have been going around this year yet, but I'm sure they've been working around my system. But I love this forest. Super nice. So this actually floods quite a bit more during the spring. But aha! I'll get you a note version of that once I get back from my afternoon walk. I have the video uploaded too, so I'll get that to you in a little bit, David. Looking forward to our lesson. I am in Lunenburg near the Lane Conservation. It's actually a pretty good foraging spot for moist plants. There's actually a fair amount of a whole variety of stuff. There's a lot of usnea here, which is kind of fun. Have you made any usmia tinctures or oils, Bill? This year I harvested a fair amount for oils. I've done it as a tincture as well, but I find, from what I've read, the oils are a little more efficacious than tinctures, but it's a good thing. Good thing to use. Turn you around so you can see. One of the things I'm interested in growing this year is shufa, or tiger nut. And I think tiger nuts are a fantastic source of food. And they're pretty easy to grow because they're just a grass. But hey, is there some coptis down here? This is Michella repens, or partridge berry. Yeah, I think a 1-to-5 is a good ratio. I honestly think the oil has been just as efficacious as the tincture, but I always kind of like what you do. I experiment with what things work and try them out different ways depending on the year or how much I have available. Partridge berry, Michella repens, is a fun edible berry. It's good for all sorts of internal complaints for estrogen-bearing human beings. There's tons of wintergreen here as well, which is a nice little snack. Really high in salicylic acid if you're looking to get rid of some sort of a pain. We also have Tremella mesenterica, which is sort of the orangey witch's butter, which I find these very fun. They're like these gelatinous mushrooms. Someone's ripped a lot of these off, but they're so strange. There's a black witch's butter as well, which looks very strange, but the orange ones are very stark. Something's been scraping their nails up against this tree. I have made coptis tinctures. There's a couple of things that I've made tinctures from that I've done it for the experience, but haven't done it again because of the amount of labor involved. Coptis is one of those things. Also, I love burdock root, but I hate digging up burdock root. I have a couple spots locally that are good for burdock because they're in a sandy spot, so I can pull out the root really easily, and it's not a hassle to deal with it. But burdock's a great thing to harvest. Oh, look at this! There's an old car. Someone must have dumped an old vehicle over the edge here. There's all sorts of strange things like this in the Lunenburg forests. Let me show you. Anybody have a guess what type of car this is? It's like the trunk. That's where the license plate would have been. In Lunenburg, because it's been around for quite a long time, there's all of these old pieces of history. Like we have these random assortments of bottles, old tins. I think that's maybe the lights for that car. Pretty neat. I'm sure you've made this, Bill, but golden thread tinctures are also kind of a funny thing to make because that's a very laborious thing to harvest as well because they're so thin. But I've been reading, I read a long time ago that golden thread was endangered in New England, and I see it absolutely everywhere. So I don't necessarily believe that. A lot of the things that are on the endangered list, even Mediola virginiana, Indian cucumber, I see that 9 times out of 10 on a hike around here. So I don't know if it's just that I'm seeing it in my particular area more, or that it's made a comeback since they last did their their sort of survey of what plants are around, but pretty interesting. I think we need to update some of those statistics. Check this out. Old trunk. Good. So I have a couple options so far with the retreats. I'm hoping that they finish the space where I live soon, hopefully by the spring. But there's also a couple options out in the western part of the country that have reasonable prices for staying there. Yes. I misread that as, for whatever reason, my brain was thinking Andrographis, but yes, Coptis. I think Coptis is worth harvesting, but yeah, it is tedious. Sorry, I'm trying to walk and read at the same time. As for the retreats, yeah, I'm hoping the middle to end of the summer I'll be hosting it. I'll be posting a whole bunch of info on that in the near future. What I'd love to do is a medicine making workshop, because I think there's been a lot of interest in that as well. I haven't really spent as much time talking about that, although I'm doing that just as much. Oh, yes, pink lady slippers. We have a ton of those around here. They're interesting because they're used interchangeably with, I'm forgetting the Latin name for them right now as well, but the other common lady slipper here. And they were also endangered, and I see them everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So let's see if we can find any chaga out here. This is good. We have a fair amount of people watching me not playing Handpan and Rap. I'm glad people are sticking around. Let's see what we can find over here. Now that I have a piece of technology, I can kind of do these streams with a little more efficiency. Oh, there's some honey mushrooms popping out in Piptoporus betulinus, which is the birch polypore. Up here, I don't know if you guys can see those. Birch polypores are usually a part of my mushroom tinctures that I make, immune stimulating tincture. I like to use chaga, Piptoporus, and Trametes versicolor, turkey tail. And that's a really nice mixture of things for winter health. Then we have some false turkey tail here. Turkey's tail is one of those things where if you just look quickly at something, yes. I've also known a couple people that have made medicine from endangered plants as well. But I catch your drift. These are not turkey tails, although I could see how people would confuse them. A lot of people, when they look at them, will say, oh, it looks like turkey tail because of the top. But the sort of hairy underside of this shows that it's a false turkey tail. But at a distance, you could see these and you'd be like, oh, that's a turkey tail. But very similar looking. To my knowledge, there are no turkey tail lookalikes that are toxic in a deadly sense. But there are many turkey tail lookalikes that grow around here. We may end up seeing some of them. Let's see if there's chaga on this tree or if it's just me seeing birch bark that's pulled off. I think it's me just seeing birch bark pulled off. A lot of the river birches here have chaga, particularly in Royalston and places like that. Yep, no chaga, just very dark birch. Very dead, dark birch. Have you found anything interesting this fall, Bill? need to start doing more of the foraging and medicine making posts as well. That's a part of my life I've been neglecting to share for a while. I'm gonna play a little flute for you guys since I'm out here. So this flute is made from one of my favorite medicinal plants, Japanese knotweed. Hated by many, loved by me because it's a great material for flutes. It's a good material to start with in making flutes as well, because it's really usable, and you can find pieces that are just as hard as bamboo, but you just have to be a little more selective in what you use for sellable product. But if I were to give something to someone just as a random gift and it wasn't on my Etsy shop, I often make it out of this just because it's kind of a fun material to do it with. And they sound really nice too. That's kind of the fun thing. I personally am a fan of flutes that look as they would have, 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago. Because they were made from sticks. They were made from tubes that had a hollow section and nodes. So I have a tendency to like things that are closer to how they would have been rather than the bejeweled style flutes. But I love the sound of the bejeweled flutes, but there's something about having this sort of material that I harvested and dried myself that I find a little bit more attractive than other ones. One of the hobbies that I can highly recommend for people is flute making. You can start to make flutes really quickly, but you continue to make small adjustments as you learn. And I've gone from making flutes that were okay to making flutes that I love and I carry with me all the time. So this particular piece of knotweed too is harder, probably as hard as bamboo or harder. The way to tell too is when they're just after a frost, right after they start to dry out. If you squeeze close to the bottom of a piece of knotweed, so maybe like a foot up from the base, you can usually tell if it's going to be a hard piece or not because there's going to be a lot of resistance. And also tapping on them, if you can hear the sort of plastic sound, that usually means the fibers are going to be strong enough for a good flute. So sometime I'll do a course in person on flute making as well. Maybe I'll add that to my list of things this summer. So that's a Japanese knotweed flute. Japanese knotweed, Polygonum cuspidatum or Polygonum japonicum, is a fantastic plant for Lyme disease. It's fantastic just for antioxidants, super high in polyphenols. It's one of the things that they'll sell in Whole Foods, and even it's usually made from knotweed, and Whole Foods sells it for $1 million, but you can literally go into your backyard typically and pull up the roots and tincture that. It's super simple way of making medicine, or even just powdering the roots. The roots are kind of hard, but the longer, slender roots that shoot out usually in the early spring, or if you find a stand that has sort of new roots, those are the easiest to harvest. But along rivers is the best spot. I learned to play as a gift. Oh, it's amazing. Yes. I love recorders too. All flutes, I love all instruments, but flutes in particular just have something magical about them. And they're even more magical when you've made them too. It's like a whole nother experience. So that's a Japanese knotweed flute. And I like ones that have bends in them. It's a nice arch. Knotweed, yeah. I agree with you. Knotweed, it has such an interesting taste. I'm actually not a huge fan. I can tolerate the powdered root more than I can tolerate the powdered stems and leaves. I don't know if you've tried to make knotweed leaf tea. I've never roasted it. Some people roast it, but I actually like the taste of knotweed leaf tea because it has some of the antioxidants that we're looking for. But it doesn't have that acrid sort of taste. Yes, it is very, very good for Lyme. You're absolutely correct. I was taking it for a long time. And I do not have Lyme anymore. A great book as well, you probably know this already if you know about knotweed, but it's Stephen Harrow-Buhner's Healing Lyme. He just passed away pretty recently, but he was a fantastic resource, just an interesting human being, poet, traveler, just an all-around great guy. So I highly recommend Plant Intelligence in the Imaginal Realm, which is one of his books. Healing Lyme, Herbal Antibiotics, Herbal Antivirus is a great book. Is a tremendous amount of information, and it's practical. The issue a lot of times with herbal literature is that the efficacious dose is not the presented dose. So if you go into a store and you're buying a capsule, which typically to be efficacious, capsules, if it's a whole herb, you'd have to be taking a handful of the capsules. They have to underdose in order to not be at risk of presenting it as a drug. I didn't know he had a new book coming. That's good to know. I think there's a lot to the herbal literature. There's obviously a huge community around that. But I think one of the things that has been sold with it in the New Age community is thinking about it in the same way as a drug. And these things have chemicals and alkaloids and constituents that are in the same family or in the same sort of general origin as our synthetics that we use in pharmaceuticals now. But there's so many protective components in natural plants that buffer some of the negative effects of an isolated alkaloid or compounds. And in fact, that when you remove the compound from the whole herb, and I'm not talking a whole extract, I'm talking more of a refined extract, the toxicity increases with further isolations. So plants are often set up so that you have other components that might buffer the negative effect of a plant or compound on your body built into it. So nature did it right before we tried to isolate it and speed up the process, as new herbalist friends on here know. Let me see what people said. Absolutely. Yeah, so the original reason I created this YouTube channel, which I kind of fell away from, was to promote my foraging and herbal classes and walks, and that was kind of the direction I was going with my life. And then I took a musical turn in that life, which I'm very glad for, but I would like to move into that as a 50-50 sort of thing. So I'm part of the American Herbalist Association. I'm a member of their organization, card-carrying member, but anybody can be a member of that. I did do some training with Demetria Clark as well. She was a great resource. Hello, how are you? How are you? Yeah, Demetria Clark is a great resource. That was kind of the beginning of my herbal journey, but foraging was the thing I was interested in before herbalism, and then from foraging I went into the herbal realm. But there was a period of my life when I was living without television or computer, and was just working, but also reading and foraging and trying to fill my brain with as much of this information as possible back then. So I'd like to move back in that direction because I very much value that lifestyle. So long answer, yes, I am a ever learning herbalist. One of the things that I think is kind of fun in the winter, which you guys probably know if you're interested in plants as well, I like the taste of pitch pine or eastern white pine leaves in the winter a little bit more than in the spring, which is kind of counter to how people usually like them. But if I don't want to dry them, or I prefer to dehydrate them because they turn yellow if you dry them. But for a long time I was either freezing, making a tea, or dehydrating and making a tea with the rind of an orange so that it has all the polyphenols in it to help you absorb the vitamin C in the pine leaves. But I was taking that as a supplement for years and years, just blended up as a capsule, I guess if you didn't like the taste of pine, or you could just have it as a tea, mix it into things. But we have a lot of the woolly adelgid here. I don't know if this particular pine has it, but oh, it does, yeah. I don't know if you guys can see. All of our hemlocks have been attacked by this nasty little critter. This one isn't too bad, but some of the predictions say that we will cease to have hemlocks in the next, well, to this extent, cease to have hemlocks in the next 50 years. Was probably one of the worst predictions that I read, but we shall see. I always have hope that nature has a way of rebalancing things anyways, so I give some stock to predictions, but I also think we're not so great at guessing the outcome of things naturally. In the same way, I'm very frustrated with DCR and the trustees. Sorry for the plane in the background. Because they have been partitioning off. Oh, come on, plane. So for other Massachusetts and New England people who may be on here, Trustees has started to partner with logging companies to manage public land. And it's at first glance, it seems like they are purposefully preserving the conservation areas here and some of the land trusts, but it's more of getting a foot in the door so that they have access to this resource through the lens of public land. So if a logging company manages the land, they suddenly have a source of wood that they can cut every 10 years, every 20 years, every 30 years. And it is absolutely horrific to the biodiversity of that area. It's sold as, oh, we're going to take away some of the trees to thin out some of the overgrown population so new varieties can come in, which A, is using that mentality that human beings know better than nature, which is not true. and B, that nature doesn't have the capacity to rectify itself. Because we're very short-sighted. It's the same thing with like frag meats growing across the world, or Japanese knotweed growing along toxified rivers. These plants are there as a scab or as a band-aid. So their function is to bioremediate the toxins that human beings have put into the world. Same with some of the trees that are short growth cycle trees here. They're creating soil, they're breaking down, they're developing, and they're allowing the plants that were here, some of the native plants, to grow. But I think we're in a spot now where it doesn't make sense to fight against non-native plants, because it's almost this like nationalist mentality that, plants that aren't from here shouldn't be here. And we're at the point now where we can't go back. We're not going to reverse our steps ecologically. So it's how do we work with the environment we have now and nurture the things that need some protection and some safety, but without the presumption that human beings clear-cutting or selectively logging a forest is going to improve it. I can give you so many examples of that, even just in my town. We managed to stop it here because we caught what was happening after they selectively logged a forest and just left refuse everywhere. It destroyed the forest, left a complete mess, and maybe 2 feet, 1.5 feet, 2 feet of wood on the ground, which in terms of mycelium and things breaking down is great because eventually it's going to turn into soil. But until then, it's choked out all the life in these forests. And it's still sold as like, oh, we're managing the land and protecting the land, when there's plenty of counter evidence that says that sort of land management is not efficacious long-term for ecological health, but it is efficacious for creating renewable resources for logging companies. So if you have DCR or trustees in your area, whatever it may be in your state, be aware that a lot of these wood and forestry companies are low on wood. So they're looking for ways to access public lands. And I never realized this, but public land is simply an asset. And the town has the right to use it how they see fit. And that includes cutting it down and managing the land. But yeah, it's insane. Look up, I don't know where you are, Bill, but if you go to Western Mass, like towards the Daniel Shea Highway, they absolutely decimated that part where the the New England Trail goes through there. It's totally a sham to get access to public lands. We stood up to it in the town that I live in Lunenburg, but they were really pursuing. And I think it took seeing a forest cut the way they were claiming they were going to do the rest of them to see the damage that it did. And it's horrific. And I got into multiple pretty heated conversations with people that believed that was the right choice to make. And it's sad. And because it's couched, this is how they trick people as well in life in general, is we're doing this for the betterment of the environment. Here's this plan, here's what will happen. But then you look at who's sponsoring this plan, and it's the companies that are getting something from it. If a pharmaceutical company comes to you and says, oh, we have this great product, and we're going to make it from something that you provide, and we're going to give you a portion of the profits from that. Like that's exactly what's happening with our conservation areas. We've pretty much been duped into selling off public land for the sake of private organizations, which very, very much frustrates me and annoys me. I'll give you an example, actually, of that. This has been selectively logged. So this area here, and this part isn't too bad, but we'll see more as we go further up. This has been thinned once. And this isn't too bad, but when we get further up, you'll see some of the refuse from that. This is something they stopped before it actually fully was selectively logged. But it's so tricky how they do things because it's always under the aegis of we're helping out the environment, we want to help you, here's our service. So anyways, I don't know if I got off on that tangent, but something I'm very passionate about, because people were even chaining themselves to trees in Western Mass to stop them from cutting down these beautiful forests there. And they'll say they're only cutting down pines, or they're leaving particular trees, which might be true, but they're setting it up so they can do future logging there. And it's not like they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. The town's getting money from it. They're getting a payoff. And it's interesting too, because the foresters, I know a couple of foresters, and I didn't really realize that they were kind of strumpets for the wood industry, which is crazy. Good. I'm really glad to hear that, Rocky Beach. Good. I'm so proud of people that have stood up and stopped that here, because it's so hard, because it's even hard to have a conversation about it with people, because they're like, oh, well, they're doing it to help the forest, they're doing it to help the trees. And it's just a lack of understanding. And you can't get mad at the people that are mean well but are supporting it, because they're just doing what they think is the right thing. But the ones that are proposing these plans know what they're doing, but the people in the towns that are letting them happen are well intended. They're just trying to protect their land. But absolutely. Thank you, Iva. This is the sort of stuff I'm usually talking about or thinking about when I'm not playing instruments. So I'm glad to have support for that from you guys. You guys are great. Yes, that's exactly what it is here too. They'll say, oh, we're not cutting it down for wood, but they're just pulping the trees. So 100%. I argue with you. Yeah, people are so obsessed with invasive plants. And I think I might have sent you the book title one time, but Invasive Plant Medicine is a fantastic book. And, a long time ago, 10, 15 years ago, completely changed my view on invasive plants. I think of them as opportunistic. When human beings destroy an area or pollute an area, it's going to have scabs, because soil is not supposed to be bare. There's not supposed to be exposed soil anywhere. That's not a natural feature of the environment. So just like if we cut our arm or scrape our arm, we're going to have a scab grow there. And it's not that the scab is bad. It's not going to stay there, but it's there until the process happens that allows that area to regrow and fix itself. So that's exactly what these opportunistic invasive plants are doing, is they're present because of human interaction. So more human interaction is not going to make them go away. It's just like when people treat their lawns for dandelions or plantain. Those plants are there because of how the humans treated their lawns previously. And because that's what is growing there to fix the situation that's currently present. And if we weren't growing European grasses on our lawns everywhere, then we wouldn't have that problem. But horrible. That's, yeah. In the U.S. too, a lot of our land has been partitioned off to these people. And it's sad. The native territory. That's amazing. There's lots of hopeful things too. I think the more people, I think because of all the lockdowns and things like that, people went outside. So suddenly there's an interest in the environment. So I think one of the things I would like to do is provide more information about how we can relate to that environment and see it through a different lens than just let's take from it perspective, and more how can we be a part of nature and not think about it like a grocery store. Because in a way it's there for us to use, in the same way that it's there for animals to use, but we have a maladaptive relationship to each other, to nature, to everything. So I think there's a lot of room for people who want to direct that sudden interest in land. So yeah, no, it's true. 100%. Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of like this too. I'll have to do it. I'll have to do this more. I enjoy talking about these things. My audience, maybe there's more of my audience that's interested in this stuff than I think. So I'm glad you guys have enjoyed it so far. I think music pulls in people that are also interested in those things as well. So thank you for the feedback about that. I don't know if anybody has been to Royalston, Massachusetts, which I highly recommend, but I won't tell you where, but that's where I harvest a lot of Ganoderma tsugai, which is the hemlock reishi, which is used interchangeably with Ganoderma lucida, which is the classic Chinese traditional medicine reishi. There's tons of it there. There's so much. So this year I didn't find as much as I usually do, but there was a fair amount there. So I definitely recommend looking in Royalston if you're in the area or you want to explore. And I'm pretty sure you'll find some reishi there. It's interesting too because it's not as present in the herbal literature, but it's used interchangeably. Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to message me. I'd love to chat. That's true. That is true. I tried to bring a flute, so I guess that counts, right? Yeah, I think maybe that's the trick. Is I'll do some hikes with talking and some music as well. So I'm gonna keep you guys on for the next couple minutes as I walk back towards my car. But any questions you guys have about this area or anything, feel free to ask them, and I'll try to answer them in the next couple minutes. We're gonna get together sometime, Bill. I think it'd be fun to do some medicine making this spring. I have a student actually in Portugal, Ivo, so on the places I'd like to visit sometime. Would that be interesting to people? And it's hard to do online, I suppose, but I haven't done pretty much any seaweed foraging, but it's on my list to do. I'm about maybe like 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours from the beach. Well, maybe an hour. My closest beach probably is towards Boston, but I prefer to go a little more north. I know that our oceans closer to Maine have safer seaweed to consume than down here, but just in terms of toxicity. But foraging is definitely on my list. Seaweed foraging is definitely on my list of things to do in the future. I'm just not super close to the ocean. Let's see. Give you guys a view of what I'm seeing too. Yeah, I'm very grateful to live in this area. I love this spot. If you're local to kind of the Fitchburg-Leominster area and you want to see an example of what I'm talking about, go check out Flat Rock Conservation or Burbank Conservation. That's in Fitchburg, kind of near the Boulder. But they recently selectively logged that area, and it's horrific. It just is absolutely destroyed. So I actually feel like I have to avoid going to some of those places that they've done that to, just because it's such a sad thing to see. And it's going to grow back. You know, the trees we have here, New England was clear cut almost completely. 80%, 85% was cut down for farms in the 1700s or later 1700s. So all of what we see as our forests here is new. Like these trees are very young, but most of our trees are under 100 years old. So we have very, very few stands of old growth trees in New England because it was just all cut down. So this is the partly logged area that was stopped. This was the beginning of us stopping some of the destruction in this area. That's what all this is. This is one of the selected areas that they wanted to finish cutting, but they didn't. How do you feel it matters to practice voice? Soundscape, I think I love having rivers in the background. One of the things that I'm most drawn towards is playing near water. And actually there's a beautiful river down here. And there's some connection, some draw for water for me when I have an instrument, a flute or a handpan or rav. So highly recommend that. I try to not be in places that are too loud with human noises, but obviously we all are part of that all the time. But flutes, I think, are a great compromise when hiking because they're so small you can just throw them in your bag. And especially the ones, I like the little pocket flutes that I make because they're an easy thing to bring with you, and they're kind of satisfyingly simple to play. Unlike a recorder Doran, which is a little more complicated. But yeah, a lot of this was cut and burned. Yeah, they did a number on this area for sure. I'll show you guys an old bridge too. There's this really cool, it's like an old, I have a feeling it goes down to some sort of tank or bunker, but it could just be an off-gassing pipe, but it's kind of a neat spot. I'll show it to you guys in a sec. There's actually an artist, I think he's a psychologist, who was proposing a trail from here all the way to Western Mass. So it would eventually hook up with some of the trails, kind of like the Mid-State Trail, but it'll go from east to west versus from north to south like the Mid-State Trail does. I think that would be a fantastic project if they can unite via trail this part of Massachusetts with Western Mass. I love Western Massachusetts. Eventually, if I'm able to save up enough, I would love to move to some sort of land in Western Mass. We currently rent a portion of an old farm right now, but super fortunate where we are. But I would love to have a space that was my own to build things on. I've been very interested in cob houses and earthen houses as well, mud huts. Another of my many interests. So I'll show you this bridge before we depart for the day. If anyone wants to check it out, this is the side of the conservation I was on. Peabody Conservation, although it's backwards for you, I see. There's actually a lot of people here today. So, do you have any raptors in those woods, Cooper's Arch? We have a fair amount of hawks. I'm not as privy to the types of hawks that we have here, but we have quite a few. We have a lot of ravens. I see hawks occasionally. The only real issue I've had with hawks is with my chickens, so I have to be very mindful of letting them out if they're out and about. This is more of the some of the birch polypores and the fake turkey tail, false turkey tail. I'm gonna change my view here. So this is I used to drive across this bridge a lot when I was younger. So when you go across here, there's a beautiful river. The water is usually very low during this summer. In the spring it's pretty high, but I randomly hiked across here to the no trespassing spot that I, of course, did not go in. Oh, look, Celandonium majus. This is a greater celandine. Not edible, but people use the yellow sap, which is coming out there, as a wart remover. And I've never really had any warts, so I've never tried it. But people use it on moles sometimes as well to remove it. And supposedly it really damages the cells in that area. And because of that, it kills it has an antiviral properties when used topically, but is not edible food-wise. But it's in the poppy family, so you can kind of see from the leaves that it has that sort of traditional poppy-shaped leaf. And this will pop up anytime there's any amount of warm weather. especially in this time of year. Celandonium majus. All right, so here's our musical pipe. So what is your prediction, people on here still? Do you think that this is going to an off-gassing of some sort of thing? Or do you think this is a bunker or what? There's nothing on it. This is Ken Air Max ink. But the reason it's interesting is not because of the pipe, but because of the sound. Very techno-y sound. So, I know, isn't that crazy? The first time I saw it, my tendency is just to try to play everything musically. So, yeah, I think it probably is a water pipe then. Oh, interesting. I feel like it could be for a bunker. Yeah, this is the area that it's in. It's near a road, but there's nothing really here. So I'm not sure what function it would serve, unless it's been there a while. But it looks pretty new. It's not an old pipe by any means. So pretty interesting. But it's definitely Bill Gates' bunker for sure. For sure. I'm sure he has them all over the place. Okay, good to know, Doran. That maybe answers the question then. Well, I'm going to depart, my friends. Thank you all for hanging out. That was a fantastic time. I'm going to do these more often. And I appreciate you guys, and thank you for reminding me that I have some subscribers that like to hear me talk and not just play instruments all the time. You guys know how to get a hold of me if you want to find me. Rewild Your Soul on Instagram and on Facebook, and here as well. Yeah, it was fun hanging out. Thank you guys for being amazing, and wishing you a lovely holiday. If I don't see you by then, I probably will, because we're getting close, but not too close to the holiday. Also, anybody that was here that is interested, has a RAV and would like a Carol of the Bells tab, I'm happy to send you what I did today for the group that I was working with. Just a free lesson, but I can forward you the tab if you want. So I'll leave you with 2 more seconds of this pipe, and then we'll depart. Have a good one.